customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DeJulius. This week, John chats with Bronkar Lee, entertainer, performer, and motivational speaker. Bronkar has an incredibly unique background that includes touring Europe as a ringmaster to a world-renowned circus. He has also appeared with Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, starred in a Super Bowl commercial, and performed at Madison Square Gardens. Bronkar has beatboxed with his son in a video that received over 200 million views. And he's also presented at over 5,000 live events for companies like Google, Facebook, YouTube, Keller Williams, and Disney Cruise Lines. In this episode, you'll learn how Bronkar transformed from a fat child to being the star performer he is today, how to deal with your inner voice, where thoughts go, energy flows, what the 5G network is, and what Bronkar will be presenting at the Customer Service Revolution Conference. Now here's your host, John DeJulius.
Welcome, revolutionaries, to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I am John DeJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DeJulius Group, and I'm pumped to be talking to a longtime good friend of mine, amazing speaker, Bronkar Lee. Welcome, Bronkar.
Hey, brother. It's great to be here.
Great to see you. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about what we have coming up together. You know, Bronkar, I've seen you speak several times. We've had you at the Customer Service Revolution twice now, one of the highest rated speakers. And then I know a bunch of my clients have hired you. But honestly, I don't know how to introduce you. Like, you're an entertainer, you're inspiring. What's the best way to capture, how do you say it?
Yeah, that's kind of the question of my life, I think.
Who's Bronkar?
Who is?
We're gonna get real deep here, real quick, right?
Here we go. We're
gonna therapist say.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking into some DNA. We're gonna be looking into some genealogy and some ancestry stuff. Yeah.
Right. You got some psychedelics there that'll help us.
Yeah. Right. Well, for me, my background is entertainment. So I was a full-time entertainer for years, and, went, deep down that rabbit hole, did, thousands of shows, all the things. And
on cruise lines and what, you were a music entertainer? Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah. So even to get a bit more complicated, yes, I was a music entertainer, and I also have a background in circus. So
that's right.
So that was kind of my sweet spot as far as, where my career took off, was kind of blending the two realms together. It was, it was kind of like, all right, it's kind of like the soft skill, hard skill combination is like the lethal thing,
Yeah.
And and so it was, I have this, I'm a musician, but I also am a circus artist. And so if I'm around the kind of variety performers or the circus people, I'm like, I'm like the outlier that I'm a musician. And when I'm with the musicians, it's like I'm the outlier where I have these, circus chops.
Yeah.
So it was always that combination as an entertainer. And my kind of signature thing was blending beatboxing and drumming with juggling. And that was kind of the thing that catapulted my entertainment career as far as that goes. And then in 5,000 words or more, I then became a motivational speaker. I always had this desire to coach. I loved coaching people. I loved, behind the scenes at events, I would always be talking with agents and supporting them to, keep their cool, during production time, or other performers. And I just ended up organically coaching people. And then I figured, why not just merge these two things together? What would happen if I took the entertainment and the motivation and coaching and merge them together? And that's kind of, where I'm at this point. So, yeah.
All right. So let's say you're at a Labor Day picnic and, someone comes up to you and says, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I, own a drugstore, whatever. How do you, because I even struggle with it. I don't have all your skill set, right? I just kind of cop out and say, I'm a customer service consultant, which I don't think encapsulates what we do. I'm guessing, and I could be totally wrong. You say I'm a performer? I don't know. What do you say?
I actually
the short answer.
Yeah. I actually say I'm a motivational speaker, and I support people to create transformation within themselves to become the next best version of themselves.
Awesome. So that's your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I guess what I like to say is that, we help companies make price irrelevant by becoming a brand customers can't live without. And, like a elevator pitch, you want them to, kind of cock their head and say, how do you do that? Right.
Yep.
Right. And so you crushed it. Well, good. Okay. And so, you've done so much. I mean, you've been on the Jay Leno Tonight Show. That's cool. Not many people could say that. The ringmaster of a world-renowned circus. You starred in a Super Bowl commercial. You performed at Madison Square Garden. You performed at the Customer Service Revolution, which I know is, the pinnacle of your career, right?
Yeah.
And something I'm going to show in our links in the show notes is your beatboxing with your son that's gotten over 200 million views, which is incredible. I mean, that's just, crazy. So you've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's not forget, out of all the accolades, let's not forget, Timmy's birthday party of 8 people,
right?
Back in 98. No, I mean, but it's funny when you say all the hype stuff, and it's like, yeah. And then don't forget those, like, those 3,743 other shows,
right?
That aren't the kind of accolades you want to brag about,
I always say, just as much as you do a bio, because what's a bio? Our top points of our life. You could do an anti-bio of if you just led with, the worst moments in your life. And, it reminds me of one of my first big presentations. I was in Vegas. this is 20 some years ago. And to show you my importance, Colin Powell was the 1 p.m. keynote speaker. And I had a breakout room at 8 a.m. that you needed, a flashlight and a map to find.
Yeah.
And bottom line, 8 a.m. in Vegas, it was me and the AV guy. I mean, no, I'm just, and that's all that was in my room, right? But that's how it should have been, and appropriately so.
Well, I love that because, and I joke around with my agent about this. I say, because we got to have those situations to then, put things into perspective so that we're super grateful for those big accolade, moments that we're including in our bios there. But I joke with my agent, I say, you know what? I really like those gigs where we're out in like Paris, Illinois, staying at the Super 8, nothing against Super 8, because it puts things into perspective when we're there kind of in the middle of quote unquote nowhere. And then we're all of a sudden, here I am in whatever, Vegas at the Caesars or whatever, and it's like this awesome resort. And because it puts it into perspective, I'm like, man, I'm really grateful that there are no bed bugs right now. And I'm really grateful.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And so I
think I just lost Super 8 as a sponsor of the podcast, but that's okay. There's other potential.
I love Super 8 too. No,
I'm just kidding.
I love everybody.
You're right. And I know you can relate to this. I know you and you're such a humble guy, but anytime I have hiccups, it's because I lost that underdog chip on my shoulder, trying to prove people wrong. And I think I've made it, or I'm entitled to this. And, it might be where you get lucky and you know how this is. And, it doesn't happen that often, but you might get a couple standing ovations in a row, right? Like back-to-back speeches. And you're like, yeah, like this is who I am. And whenever you get, at least for me, whenever I start thinking for that for a second, I get humble. And it's the best medicine to say, you know what, I'm this kid from the 216 area code that, I have to go back to that mentality. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's like it for you, but it's kind of the same lines of your Hotel 8 or Motel 8 or whatever it is, Super 8.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll just call the hotel or motel unanimous. How about that?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
unanimous motel in the middle of nowhere. I won't even give a city reference or village reference for that point. But
Right.
but yeah,
So, go
that
ahead.
perspective shift is so important. Yeah.
It is. And remembering where we came from. And you're right. It's so cool. So you've had this outstanding career, and it's evolved, it's morphed. So what is your primary thing that you're being asked to do now, with your presentations?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about mindset. It's all about, activating the mental. Essentially, my main focal point is rewriting that narrative of the internal dialogue. That it's kind of like, what are we putting on the forefront of our minds every day, no matter what industry we're in? Obviously, customer service, this makes a huge difference of how we approach an interaction with a customer or a client. This, has a huge impact on how we collaborate with our colleagues, our peers, even, family members, extending into personal life. What we're thinking about, where thoughts go, energy flows. What we're putting on the forefront of our mental search engine, our mind, matters. And so that is really, my zone of expertise. And that sometimes that shows up when I'm working with executives and I'm doing, one-to-one coaching. Sometimes that's in my group coaching program. Sometimes that's almost always in my keynote presentations. That's on the forefront of the presentation. And then what I do is I use different entertainment pieces, storytelling, music, things like that, to create that kind of that activation to really have the entertainment edge. That is almost like, the way I look at it is, every time I do something that's entertaining, it's like presenting the audience with an invitation, and they can open that invitation up and come to the party if they want to, and it's not excluding anybody because it's music or it's a story, and then, hey, show up to the party. We're going to have snacks, hors d'oeuvres. We're going to have some fun. And I might introduce you to a new concept here that you haven't thought of before, but it's okay. It's safe. We're having fun. We're vibing. It's good. So that's kind of my main topic and focal point, and then also partially how I deliver that.
I love it. And I've seen it. My audience has seen it, and I know it evolves and changes, and you tie in. And, I think this might be more jealousy, but whenever you see someone, like our mutual friend, Dan Thurman, who, God bless his heart, introduced us, 6-7 years ago. He says, I got this guy. I'm like, all right, Dan, if you say so, and you crushed it. And we've had you, this will be a third time, which you and Shep Hyken, Shep's coming back this year for a third time. That's a record. We've never had anybody 3 times. So that just says a lot about, the performance and takeaway value. It's not just something you sit back and, I got entertained. You move, you get chills, you could choke me up, you make me laugh, and there's a message. But my point to people like you and Dan Thurman, who's you just I don't know how to describe him if you haven't seen him, but he's doing somersaults and riding around on unicycles. And I always like to say this, people, that have these, and Shep's another one. He's a magician, besides one of the best customer experience authors and speakers of all time. But I always used to like to say, they have to do that stuff to make up for their lack of content. And then I see you guys, I'm like, shit, no, that's just me, trying to sleep better at night because I can only do one thing, and you guys are doing it all. And I always say this about you and Dan and Shep. I go, if all they did was their talent of performing, that would be awesome. If they didn't do performing and they did their motivation, inspirational speech by itself, that would be awesome. The fact that they can do it both at the same time really just pisses me off. I mean, that's just, but that's what you bring. I mean, that's what you bring. But, listen, I want to circle back to something because I think it's really interesting. The inner voice. And I don't know how you got in. I don't know if this was a, personal experience. I don't know how you brought it together, but, there's a quote out there. It says, the most important person you're going to talk to all day is yourself. Yep. Be careful what you're saying to it. And I think we all have demons and those different voices on our shoulders at times. And maybe it's kind of momentum, right? When you're going good, maybe the positive voice is saying, you got this, man, you're crushing it. And when you're going bad, you got a voice saying, dude, you're a phony, and you don't, you're not a great dad, and you're not
Yeah.
a great significant other. How
Mhm.
does that work? How did you stumble on that content?
Yeah, that's been a journey for a long time. And, through personal experience, you know, let me preface it with this. So the way I like to look at it is wherever you go, there you are. It's always you. You're always there, no matter what. If you're on vacation in the Bahamas, if you're at your house without power, if you're driving on the freeway, wherever you go, there you are. And you're there. And so we're always looking through the lenses of our own glasses. We're always seeing the world through there. And there's always a loop going on in our heads. There's always music in our minds. And this is a parallel that I like to draw, like literally using music too, that gets stuck in your head, right? Just like a catchy hook or a chorus or a melody gets stuck in your head. The same thing happens with lyric. The same thing happens with words, whether it's words that someone else says to us, maybe a preferred or a less preferred experience, or things that we may tell ourselves. And so the key is, just like we were talking about earlier, having those less preferred experiences at hotels or motels to counterbalance it's actually really healthy. But the key is to learn from that experience, or learn from that voice, or learn from that story, or learn from that song that's in your head, and have awareness of it. And then to say, okay, well, that doesn't define who I am. That is an opportunity for me to learn. And that's one of my favorite words, is opportunity. What's the opportunity here?
Yeah.
What's the opportunity to grow in this moment? How can I grow from this situation? And to always be focused on, becoming more than I've been before. And so that's the present moment that gratitude breathes in a lot, right? When we can breathe gratitude into a moment, then what we're doing, the yesterday is the past, tomorrow is the future, today is the gift. That's why it's called the present. And so when we can come back to the present and let that anxiety of potential future go, let depression or reflection, whatever it is in the past go, and be right here. And so to answer the question, that was a little bit of a skirt around to give a little more context, but I originally discovered that internal dialogue, through other inspirational people, through other people that are on kind of quote unquote the good path, or spreading the good stuff, as I like to say. I'm definitely a big believer in the collective consciousness, which we can see through the internet, of being able to observe what other people have learned, and then to adopt that if we choose to ourselves. So I was definitely influenced by multiple other resources and motivators. And then I've just, by doing the introspective work myself and breaking through some really big barriers myself, then I'm able to support others in that process because I've gone through the work. It's kind of like, for me, I was a fat kid, right? I used to be 100 pounds bigger. And, by going through that process, then one day I kind of had my awakening, and then I transformed my nutritional intake. I transformed my physical output, and I lost, almost 100 pounds. But through that process, then I was able to support other people in that. I became a personal trainer, and I did that for years. But it was like, after I had walked in those shoes of the big guy, I could support other people in like, hey, this is what it's like. This is what I went through, a real experience, not just a book that I read. No offense to reading. Reading's great, but not just a book that I read or a speech that I saw. It was like, oh, this was real talk. This was me being, bullied as a kid for years of my life. And then finally taking action and transforming my life. But then through that process, being able to show up and support others. And that's one thing that I base everything on. For me to speak about something, to talk about something, to help others with something, I have to have gone through that myself in order to then kind of self-qualify to be that supporter for them.
So you said a lot of great things. I love this topic. And are you going to be going into this at the Revolution a little bit? The inner voice? Yeah. Okay, good. We'll get to that. But, especially with the rise in awareness and the kind of permission since the pandemic of mental wellness, right? I mean, it's one of I think the silver linings of the pandemic was now it's more acceptable than it was, in probably our generation. And I'm older than you, but growing up, I mean, that just wasn't something you raised your hand or went and told your dad, hey, I'm not, my dad, he would have, laughed at me if I would have said that. But so I love that. I think it's timing. But do you have some tips or what do you do when you don't like what your inner voice is saying? Like, you got a little quick tip that people listening could use to try to, not let that spiral?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll definitely go into much more detail at the the event, the customer service event. This is, like I said, primarily where my passion lies in this arena. So, it's without, because I don't want to start, because I could easily go into my keynote.
I know, it's a can of worms.
And it's
but
like,
you have like one high level, like, hey, what do you do, Bronkar? What do you do when you don't like what the voice is saying? Is there a quick exercise you do? Is it meditation? I don't know. But, I have that voice and, I want to shut it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's not an easy one sentence answer.
Yeah. It's not a quick one sentence answer. It's a 45-minute, just because I've thought so deeply about it. But I will say this. There's a power in the breath, which is being able to breathe, to activate and reprogram the inner dialogue. And it's really quick. I'm not going to try to teach it right now. I'm not going to go into detail, but
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do.
Do you do positive affirmation to prevent the wrong inner voice speaking? Is that a part of it?
There's a daily practice that I do.
Good.
More than daily practice that I do. And it's become a way of life for me. And, the thing is it extends into everything. For me, I'm a super passionate dad and I have, 2 boys just like you. Mine are a few years younger, but for me, it's parenting is, I tell people, I'm like, parenting is the greatest spiritual journey of all time, because you learn more about, or I have, and most people learn more about themselves through parenting because it requires you to really look at yourself. I mean, you can see your behavioral patterns. You can see your, any kind of insecurities, guilt, doubt, shame, anger, frustration, whatever, you see it in your kids reflecting back to you. And there's something fascinating about that. It's like when you hear your own words coming back to you. That's what's so cool about coaching is, when I first discovered life coaching almost, 20 years ago, hearing my words reflected back to me. It's different. It's so different when you're observing yourself from the outside. You're truly being the observer there. And with our kids, man, they teach us so much. And when I see patterns in them, then I check myself and I ask, whoa, where did that pattern come from? Better, worse,
God.
right or wrong,
you're opening up. Whenever I get mad, and my kids are all adults, but since they were 5, anytime I got mad and said, why do they react like that? Hey, whatever. And I'd always realize that's they got that from me. And it's the most painful thing. And an eye-opening thing of it doesn't matter what we say, it's what we do. And if that's how we react, if that's how we talk to people, if that's how we react when we don't like what's going on, they're gonna adopt that.
Yeah. And I would say also in agreement with what you just said, and it does matter what we say as well as do, because our words have power. And when we can align both of those together, what are the words we're speaking with the omnipresent undercurrent of energy or intentionality or deliberacy behind that, that's when you get that real effect. That's the soft skill, hard skill combo, right? It's like, this is the word, and the way we say the word matters. The word does have an energy to it. And so when we say that word or those words or that sentence that is multiple words organized together, and we have clear intention behind it, that's when you get that ultimate power there. But one thing that I can share in this is a technique that I use called reflection projection. And this is a daily practice for me, is at the end of the day, and I use this for parenting a lot. at the end of the day, reflecting on moments of, that I can celebrate, that I'm proud of, to fill that, as well as how could I improve? What did I do today where I might have my passion bubbles towards the surface, right? It's like maybe I lost it, or maybe I yelled, or maybe I whatever. And okay, cool. So next time, then I'm going to project into the future, and I'm going to say, now I'm going to be aware of it. It's like reflection here, neutral space, and then project into the future and see myself doing that in that similar situation in the future and saying, oh, here's what I could say. It's kind of like, imagine, for everybody listening, imagine a situation you were in where maybe you got fired up and or whatever, you got high, your nervous system got hijacked by your emotions, and then you just couldn't find the words that you wanted to use. And then after that situation, you reflected back on it. You said, man, I wish I would have said this. Man, I could have. And then you might come up with 20 different things you could have said besides the one thing you said that just wasn't what you wanted to say.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. By practicing this, we reflect back on those less preferred situations. And then we say, okay, next time that comes up, I'm going to have that on the forefront of my mind so that I use this sentence, this statement, this energy, whatever it is. And then we're much more likely to, when we put that out there, it's right here. We've recorded it in our minds. And then we are much more likely to show up and then achieve that, deliver that. And maybe it doesn't happen the first time. Maybe it happens on the 16th time or the 24th time. But when we practice it on a daily basis, that reflection projection, then we're much more likely to be able to reprogram our behaviors based upon the awareness that we have in our minds, and taking that time when we're not invested emotionally in the moment to actually do the reprogramming or the deep thinking about it.
Wow, that's awesome. I love it. And I'm so guilty of that road rage, right? And I got to get up to that guy and say, what the hell? Why didn't you go when it was green? And whatever. It's just so stupid. But no, I love that. I love that, the intentionality of that, because we all have that knee-jerk reaction, or at least I do, of then being embarrassed by who was that? Like, it was me, but where did that come from? And it's typically not even the situation. It might be what's been leading up to that situation, right? And taking the call center's person's head off, because you're annoyed, but you're really not as annoyed. That was just the tipping point of what's been going on in your week or month, which is exactly what we train with customer experience, right? And how not to, one thing we train, which we are hitting on, is when customers get upset or they're disappointed with you, they are not going to act rationally. They're going to act irrationally. And here's why, right? And what's been going on in their day, week, month, that to you might be like, all right, I made you wait 5 minutes. I think you're overreacting here. Again, it's probably not the 5 minutes that you made him wait. It's other things going on. And if we knew what those other things were, my reaction to you, again, first I'm thinking you're overreacting, like, dude, calm down. It was 5 minutes or whatever it is, right? But if I really knew what you've been dealing with, I'd be like, I can't believe that's all you're doing. Like, if I was you in that situation, I'd be throwing things at me, and again, it's never, but go ahead. I know you got some stuff there.
Well, yeah, this is like the premise. I'll give a quick premise. So the high level of my passion in keynoting and topic is what I call the 5G network. And it's the fact that we all have this inner hotspot. And I'll go in way deeper into this at the event, but basically the 5Gs are growth, grace, gratitude, gifts, and giggles. And what we're doing is we're constantly searching for how we can utilize, one of these 5Gs, if not all of these 5Gs. And customer service is such a great place for this. And exactly what you just said about, when you're on the call, I recently had this experience where we bought, I'm not going to name names, but we bought a very expensive refrigerator, right? And refrigerators are kind of like the core of the house, right? It's like, that's where you keep all your stuff. It's right there in the central nervous system of the house. It kind of, that kitchen area, and the fridge is so important. And I told my wife, I said, Sin, get the best fridge you can get. Like, just go for it. Right. So we got the thing. It looks like a nightclub when you open it up. You know what I mean? It's like really nice lights and like this cool paneling and like, it's amazing. And then literally the moment we plugged it in, it started making a noise. And I was like, well, it's just acclimating. Within a month, the main fan, the motor had shut off. Everything was down.
Wow.
Had a repairman come out and they fixed it. 8 months later, the exact same issue happened. And I'm like, guys, I literally said, do the thing, get the best one so we don't have to deal with it for 10 years, And so now the same repairman comes over and he told me, he said, look, brah, I would be pissed right now if I were you. Here's what you got to do. You got to call them up and you got to just go off. You got to go off on them, man. And you got to go off. So then what they'll do is they'll turn their head and then they're going to hook you up with a new fridge. You got to go off though. And I said, bro, that's not my style. I'm not going to go off on anybody. First of all, the person that is going to be answering the phone,
it's not their fault,
has no power in this. They don't have a dog in the fight. They don't have any control over this. And I'm like, so instead of going off, I approached this with a much more calm presence. And I spoke to the person, random
customer support rep.
Yeah. Number 567, you know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm like, look, I get their name. I always reflect that back. I get, I want them to know that I'm present. And I'm like, here's the deal. I know this has nothing to do with you. You didn't manufacture this fridge. You didn't put this thing together. You didn't sign off on it. You have nothing to do with it. You just happen to be my kind of third party. You're like my translator. And so I just want to say, hey, I'm recruiting you on my team as I'm on your team as well, because I'm here to support you too. And I want to work through this issue without getting angsty or going off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so setting that tone and then searching for those G's there and finding that, oh man, you know what? I'm super grateful that you're here today to help me through this problem, right? I'm going to grow in this situation as well. I'm looking for ways that I can grow. And you know what? I'm creating space for grace because I know that this isn't your thing. You know what I mean? And hey, maybe I'm going to be able to find an opportunity to giggle and laugh a little bit and say, hey, you know what? This is ridiculous. Can you imagine if this happened to you? Like, you know what I mean? And so now suddenly coming in as a softer approach, even though I may be very worked up about it, that's going to get me a much greater result. We ended up resolving the whole thing. I won't, tell the whole detail, but it's like we resolved the whole situation in a very harmonious way. We got our fridge working. We got everything jamming. Everything's good. But for me, it's too freaking easy to just go off. And not only that, and I'm a deep thinker, so I like to, play chess, right? It's chess, not checkers. But that energy is going to, whether I admit it or not, whether I'm aware of it or not, is going to affect that person. And I don't know who that person is. Right. And this happened to be a woman. She might have been a mom of 3 spirited boys. She might have been a single mom with 3 spirited boys, working her second job, stretched. I don't know what that may do to her.
One of her children could have, difficulties, aging parents. And you know what? You're so right. She's getting 15 calls an hour of people bitching. Yeah. And all you could be is another person bitching versus, hey, I know you got a tough job. Is there any way you can help me? Who says that to her? Right. And she's going to do all she can.
Well, I did say that to her. And then we had our dude come over the next day, and he prioritized us. Like she was like, I'm putting this on the top of the thing. I'm going to call so-and-so specifically. And John, I've had this happen. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying this isn't because I'm just like special. It's because I use these specific communication.
Intentionality, yeah.
Yeah, these communication tools, but I get free stuff everywhere. Like it just shows up. And I'm not trying to get free stuff. I'm simply saying, hey, how can I bring a little levity to this situation? How can I catalyze a smile? How can I, brighten this person's day a little bit? And I get free stuff like all the time, on the top of the thing, I get the VIP pack or whatever the thing is. And it's like, it didn't even,
no, you know what, Bronkar, you're being a human first and then a customer second, whatever that, needs some help. But I love that. I love that. And I want to capture for the show notes, the 5G network. I heard you say growth, grace.
Yeah.
What else?
Growth, grace, gratitude, gifts, and giggles. And that's a large part of my keynote content going in deeper on those elements there. Yeah.
Spend 2 days with John and other world-class experience leaders to learn the best ways to build experiences that attract loyal customers and employees. The Customer Service Revolution Conference takes place live in Cleveland. Visit customerservicerevolution.com to get tickets today.
So I don't know if we haven't really advertised this part of it. So you're keynoting at this year's Customer Service Revolution, which is only a couple weeks away, October 11th and 12th in Cleveland, bringing you back. But what we haven't told people is you're wearing two hats, which you are so good at. Not only are you keynoting, performing, inspiring, all that, but we brought you because you're such a fan favorite of our revolutionaries. You're the MC this year.
Yeah.
So they're going to get to see a lot of you, and you're going to come out in between, presenters. And so tell us about both. And I know you probably explained what your keynote's going to be about, but if there's anything you haven't, what if people that are going, what are they going to get from your keynote, and what can they look forward to hearing from your MC hat?
Yeah. So the MC hat's really exciting to me because it's a way to kind of keep those energetic touch points throughout the experience, whether it's just a moment of reflection, projection, or integration, or, basically the way that I'll set up my high concepts. And then because they're all mindset oriented, we can utilize them throughout the conference. And so it's like, oh yeah, hey, don't forget about this. Oh yeah, did you notice that? So I'm really excited about that because then it's a long-term relationship with your audience, a more intimate relationship with your audience, because it's like not just, hey, here I am doing my 40-minute thing or whatever it is. It's like, oh, cool, I'm going to do some stuff. And then we're going to be reminded of that throughout. And my personal style of emceeing is there will be no boring introductions for anybody. So if you're looking forward to a boring introduction from an MC, that ain't going to happen with me. So
yeah, and you're not going to, tell us where the bathrooms are, and in case of emergency. No, I hate it. I'm so,
I might ask where the bathrooms are, but
right. But we don't need housekeeping. We don't need, he graduated from, and he's an all. Yeah, they all are. So yeah, I love that. And that's why we're having you. And we do. The hardest part, or the most important part we do every year, is who we bring in as an MC.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just key to whenever I see an MC coming out, I'm like, oh, there's my chance to run to the bathroom or get in line for the buffet ahead of everyone else. And, I know when people see you, they're going to sit down and be like, what's this guy going to do next? I mean, or say next. And that's why we are so excited to have you. Bronkar, of all the things, knowing you and of all the amazing things you've accomplished, and like I said, been on the Tonight Show and performed at Madison Square Garden, and millions of views of your YouTube videos, and all the things you've done. I think one of the things I respect most about you, and you mentioned it already, is your commitment to being a great dad. Where'd that come from? There's usually two places that comes from: a great role model as a dad, or the opposite, right? And, if you can give us a couple things you do intentionally to be a great dad, that I always learn from you and think a lot of us are parents out there. And sometimes I catch myself thinking my parenting is done because they're adults. And, that's the farthest thing from the truth. I got to keep on reminding myself, no, I mean, that, it's never done until, God takes us. So yeah, where did your inspiration to be a great father come from? And if you can give us one or two best practices that you do that help you be a better father, parent.
Yeah. The parenting, I've heard that it's never done. It's in fact just begun. That's, with parents with, older kids. Yeah, for me, it was definitely, I have an interesting story of not knowing my biological father until I was 28 and then meeting him for the first time. And I was adopted by my other dad when I was young, when I was 6 years old. And so he raised me and love him unconditionally. For me, there was not ever having that biological father there definitely influenced me in a very negative way, a lot of anger, frustration, doubt, insecurity. And this is actually a large part of my story with the internal dialogue and rewriting that script, retelling that story into one that I truly am. And so because of that adversity, because of that challenge, because of that frustration, that actually became my greatest catalyst. And that became fuel for my fire in a positive way for showing up and being the dad that I never had. And so I am super passionate about showing up for my boys every day and, in the greatest way that I can. So there are, tons of best practices that I have, around parenting. I'm very committed with my wife, Cindy, who's really, really passionate as well. And we're very, a lot of it is how we communicate off script, so to speak, in that reflection projection stuff. It's like how we're kind of recalibrating on a regular basis and getting clear on the co-facilitation of things, because we're very different people. And I parent very differently than she does, and she parents very differently than I do. And the boys look at us very differently. There are certain things that she has the ability to do that I just couldn't get away with. They just wouldn't work at all. For so many reasons that we could never name them all. And then likewise with me, I get away with things that she couldn't get away with, and it's like, for example, like just physically, our dudes are fast and strong, and there is no way that she could catch either of them if we were out. Like, there's just no way. I mean, she's, so then she's required to use her Jedi mind powers to manipulate them, to influence them, you know what I mean? And so, to keep them safe, right? And so,
right.
And she just used, she was just telling the story the other day about using this when we were out camping. But it's like, she physically can't do the same things that I can do. I'm still faster and stronger than both of them. And so I can, and I'm sure
that
that's
window's closing. Yeah.
I was going to say I might have like another like 2 years. It's like,
what I found is, however long you really have, you get a little time after that because they still think of you as their father, and he could probably kick my ass, even though we know, that window closed. You get a little extra time, but then eventually they figure out, listen, I'm twice his size. He gasses after 2 seconds. They finally figure it out. Then the bluff is no longer.
Well, then you hope that you've done the job of,
right.
Again, the emotional skills, the mental skills. And that's where that's why I'm so passionate about the mindset and all of these, these skills that we all possess that aren't the physical skills. There's definitely physical skills that are really important. There's, that's a whole nother topic, but the mental skills and emotional skills are so critical, because then if we have, empowered them with these skills, when they become stronger, faster, whatever it is than us, they're not just going to, like, back to the customer service story, they're not just going to go off on us because they can. You know what I mean? Because they're entitled or something, or they're on the other side of the counter, or they're a little fat. It's like they're going to pause and they're going to think about that, and they're going to tap into their 5G network, and they're going to see, okay, how can I have a little gratitude for dad? How can I grow here? How can I create space for grace? They're going to be thinking on those terms. Just because they're the fastest and the strongest doesn't mean that they have to flex those muscles and overpower people or whatever. They can still come back to that collaboration. Many hands make light work. 1 + 1 = 3, because you have the harmony. That's the goal. That's my goal, at least for the short term.
That's awesome.
So.
I love it. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. There's so much more to unpack. I'm curious because we have very similar backgrounds. My dad left us when I was 6. Didn't see him again for 27 years. Saw him for the final time when I was 33. and just to find out what happened to him. Was he in the witness relocation program? Like, what would justify, a dad leaving 6 kids? So yeah, I mean, all that. And I also wonder, and if you can answer this in a second, but because it's about your inner voice, right? So are you still, and is this good or bad? I got to believe you're inside, you still could be the fat kid, right? Mm-hmm. And the kid that his biological dad left, right? Or whatever, the narrative is. So, that's interesting to me. It's probably a say for another podcast, but yeah, that's all comes up because you don't lose that perception of both, right? Mm-hmm. Being a fat kid that was probably made fun of and not being able to maybe participate in the sports as well as I know you eventually were able to, or whatever the stigma comes with that and the lack of confidence. Can you quickly hit on that? Is that part of it?
Oh, it's definitely, first of all, that's still there. Those stories are still part of me.
Yeah.
But there's a difference of them being part of me and ruling me. They don't control me. They don't have power over me. However, I can call upon them when I need to. And so I'm very protective of, if I see somebody getting made fun of for being heavy set, I'm super protective. And so it's like, I get, I jump in and I'm not necessarily going to go off on them, so to speak. Right. But it's like, I'm going to come to their aid, support in any way that I can. So that's still there. And that's the same, the passion of helping other people maybe lose weight, physically as a trainer, which I'm no longer practice that. That was years ago. I still support people if I'm coaching them in making good, nutritional intake decisions and physical output decisions. But I'm not that's not my deep work.
Yeah.
It's that, but it's that mind, because that controls, where thoughts go, energy flows. And it's like, that is so powerful. And for me, I still have that abandoned 6-year-old that's within me, and I can access that if I need to. And that awareness is there. And so then I can see it. It's like you can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah.
But it's about being able to take that and acknowledge it and say, okay, well, now I've got this tool in my tool belt and I can use it if I need to. So I use that, the fat kid card, like you were saying, and the father one as well as need be. And I talked to my boys about that. I talked to my boys about the dad thing. And I say, I didn't have this when I was your age. And I'm really passionate about making sure that you guys do. So I bring that stuff up and use that in our relationship in a positive way for that as well. But I think that's the key, is to really harness that and understand that story, that experience, that moment was a snapshot inside of your lifetime movie. Yeah. And it's like, that was one chapter. That was one part. It doesn't have to rule us. In fact, I'm not going to give it permission to rule me. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to release what doesn't serve me, and I'm going to hold on to what does.
I love it. I mean, I can go all day, because that's a fascinating topic. Something that a lot of people don't know is models, probably more female, I would think. I could be wrong. Female models and basketball players suffer from self-esteem. And on the surface, you're like, what are you talking about? Cindy Crawford, whatever. I mean, they're gorgeous, but how could they suffer? Or, a Shaquille O'Neal or someone suffer. Well, the reason is, when they were in grade school, they were giraffes, right? And you're a 5'6", 5'7", 5'9" girl in 4th or 5th grade, or a 6'2" boy, 6'4" boy, right? That you're made fun of. You could see them walking down the hall, from, the whole hallway. Yeah. And no one's going to the basketball games on Saturday, CYO basketball games, and seeing that this kid is, a pretty talented. Or, when you're in, listen, I kicked myself today of the girls I made fun of in 4th and 5th grade that, today I'm kicking myself saying, what was wrong with me? but that self-esteem kind of doesn't leave them, right? Like being the fat kid 25 years later or 45 years later. So it's just such an interesting psychology because they weren't, for the longest time, they didn't have a place in their class or so to speak. So no, I love this. I am so pumped. I'm so excited. Every time I talk to you, I'm really excited that you are going to be emceeing and keynoting the Customer Service Revolution in a few weeks, October 11th and 12th in Cleveland. And your links to follow Bronkar, his website, his YouTube beatbox video that went viral, and will be all in the show notes. Bronkar, I appreciate you so much in so many different ways, personally, professionally, what you bring to everyone you come in contact with. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to an awesome event together, bro.
Thank you, Revolutionaries, for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. We will see you next week.
We appreciate your reviews. Please be sure to share your comments and let us know what you're enjoying most on the podcast. And to hear more episodes, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and being part of the Customer Service Revolution.